Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to see you again in today's news program. Here, we and you will share and interact with the latest news and hottest events that are of interest to the public at home and abroad. Details will be available shortly.
In an interview published on May 8 by Sarah, former Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said he left the country and traveled to Krakow, Poland, shortly before President Volodymyr Zelensky issued a travel ban for former diplomats that came into effect on May 8. "I never thought I would have to flee the country overnight like a thief," Kuleba said in an interview with the Italian newspaper. Kuleba claimed that the order issued by President Zelensky was aimed directly at him and several other former diplomats. Although the measure officially involves broader travel restrictions for men of military age, Kuleba said that was not the case because diplomats are not required to serve in the military. Mr. Kuleba stressed the fact that Mr. Zelensky and his administration do not want us to go abroad and say things that they believe may be contrary to the government's policy. "I estimate that there are about 20 of us who are subject to this restriction." The former Ukrainian foreign minister believes that the measure was implemented because of the old mindset that still exists among some senior officials in the country. Mr. Kuleba explained to such people that if you go abroad as a free citizen, you automatically become an agent plotting against the state. However, he did not name anyone specifically. He also asserted that he generally tends to defend the actions of the KF during official trips abroad. However, the press service of the former Ukrainian foreign minister said that Courier d'Era had incorrectly presented Mr. Kuleba's words. According to the press service, the former minister did not leave the country permanently, but was on a scheduled trip to South Korea and was expected to return to Ukraine on May 20. Mr. Kuleba has served as Ukraine's foreign minister since May 2020 and previously in 2024 as part of a major cabinet reshuffle. According to Ukrainian media at the time, President Zelensky had become increasingly dissatisfied with Mr. Kuleba due to the official's allegedly ineffective efforts to secure arms supplies from Western donors. On September 8, Russian President Vladimir Putin submitted to the State Duma, the lower house of parliament, a bill on withdrawing from the European Convention against torture and other inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. The bill declares the abolition of the European Convention against torture and other inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment of November 26, 1987 and its protocols No. 1 and No. 2 of November 4, 1993, signed on behalf of the Russian Federation in the city of Staff, France, on October 28, 1996. According to the bill's text, the reason for the abolition is that the Council of Europe has obstructed the process of electing a new member from Russia. As a result, Russia has not been represented in the European Committee Against Torture since December 2023. Among the reasons for the withdrawal from the convention are that Russia's requests have been ignored. The submission points out that this is a discriminatory approach and a violation of Russia's representation in the European Commission, which undermines the mechanism established by the European Convention for Mutual Monitoring of Compliance with International Obligations in the field of combating torture and other inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova stated that the withdrawal from the above convention will not harm Russian citizens. Since 2022, Russia has withdrawn from more than 20 Council of Europe documents, including the Council of Europe Statute and Conventions on the Protection of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms and the Suppression of Terrorism. Recently, sharing with the Ukrinform news agency, Deputy Head of the Intelligence Department of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry Vladimir Bisky said that North Korean soldiers are still active in Russia but avoid the attention of the media because they are not on combat duty in sea. The main task of North Korean soldiers is currently to build defensive positions and strengthen border security in the Russian border area. According to GUR, the activities of North Korean units are carried out in rotation. Earlier on March 3, Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean President Kim Song-chun held talks in Beijing, China. At the event, Mr. Putin praised the North Korean soldiers sent to support the Russian army against Ukrainian forces as well as emphasizing the importance of cooperation between the two countries. For his part, Mr. Kim emphasized that the relationship between Russia and North Korea is developing in all areas. Mr. Kim also thanked Mr. Putin for the Russian leader's appreciation of the contributions of North Korean soldiers in helping Moscow liberate the region from the occupation of the Ukrainian army. Meanwhile, the deputy head of the GUR added, North Korean citizens are also participating in labor in Russia. Mr. Ski cited figures showing that Pyongyang plans to send thousands of workers from various sectors to learn from Russia, especially in defense. According to Ukrainian intelligence, there will be about 6,000 North Korean workers in sea alone, of whom more than 1,000 are already here to repair roads and build fortifications. In addition, many of them have signed contracts with the Russian Ministry of Defense and have been sent to the front lines. We have data on the recruitment of citizens from other countries to work for Russian companies. Typically in the Yabuga region, where Russia is expanding its production line. Initially, they had only 1,000 workers, but now they plan to have 40,000 in Yalabuga, where UAVs are produced. We have recorded many foreign citizens who have signed contracts and come to Russia to work. Many of them later signed contracts with the Russian Ministry of Defense to perform combat missions, said Mr. Skibsky. Russia has recruited about 280,000 contract soldiers since the beginning of 2025. Notably, the Kremlin has recruited at least 35,000 new contract soldiers every month through active propaganda and financial support. Typically, Russian soldiers can receive about $24,500 when signing their first contract. Mr. Ski said there are many signs that Russia will complete its military recruitment plan by the end of this year. In a recent commentary in Foreign Policy magazine, Sarung Shitter, director of the Southern Hemisphere program at the Quincy Institute, said that despite pressure from the West, Southern Hemisphere countries still maintain close relations with Russia. This comes from many deep-rooted reasons including economic interests, security, and the desire for a multipolar world order. These countries not only maintain relations but also see Russia's existence as an important counterweight in the global balance of power. One of the most important reasons why southern countries do not turn their backs on Russia is because of economic and security interests. Russia is an important source of essential goods and weapons. Expert Shitter noted that Russia is the largest supplier of imported weapons to countries such as India, Azeri, and many others. This shows the military dependence that has been built and consolidated over many decades. Economically, Russia plays a special role in the supply of energy and strategic goods. For example, India and Turkey are two of Russia's major oil importers. Meanwhile, Brazil is heavily dependent on Russian fertilizers, an essential element for its huge agricultural sector. In addition, Russia is also a leading nuclear power with many projects operating in other countries, strengthening its position on the global energy map. Not only stopping at economics, Russia also plays an increasingly important role in ensuring security in many regions. Especially in the Sahel region of Africa, Russia has replaced France and the United States as a new security force welcomed by many countries. This shows Russia's flexibility and adaptability in filling the power gap, especially when Western powers withdraw or reduce their influence. In addition to specific interests. Another underlying reason why Southern Hemisphere countries maintain relations with Russia is because they desire a multipolar world order rather than a bipolar world. According to expert Shitter, a bipolar world often creates pressure for countries to choose and stand on one side of two independent blocs. This can limit the freedom of action and strategic space of rising countries. On the contrary, the existence of major powers such as the US, China and Russia creates a multipolar structure. For rising countries, a multipolar world is better than a world with two great powers. Expert Shitter argues that multipolarity provides greater strategic space for countries that are not in the Great Power Club. In fact, many Southern Hemisphere countries have reacted harshly to Western efforts to isolate Russia. U.S. President Donald Trump's imposition of a 25% tariff on Indian imports to pressure the four countries to stop buying Russian oil has shown the strain in this relationship. Instead of complying, these countries have more incentive to seek other partners to strengthen their independence and avoid being dominated. They do not want to be governed by the rules set by a few powers. The refusal of the Global South to turn its back on Russia is a clear sign of a change in the world order. It is not just a political disagreement but also an assertion of sovereignty and national interests. The Southern Hemisphere countries see Russia not only as a military-economic partner but also as a strategic ally with whom they share the aspiration for a more equitable and multipolar world order. Therefore, according to expert Shitter, Washington needs to rethink its pressure strategies. The southern states have good reasons to maintain their ties with Moscow, and increasing pressure can only make them closer. According to AFP news agency, on 8, French parliamentarians voted for a confidence vote in Peruvian Prime Minister Francois. A total of 364 lawmakers voted against him and 194 supported him. The 364 abstentions exceeded the 280 threshold needed to oust the government. The Peruvian Prime Minister himself called for the confidence vote to gain parliamentary support for his strategy to reduce the budget deficit, which is now nearly double the EU's 3% ceiling, and begin tackling a public debt of 114% of GDP. He wants Parliament to approve a controversial €44 billion, $51 billion, savings plan, which includes the cancellation of 2 public holidays and a freeze on government spending. The vote forced Mr. Peru to resign after less than a month in office, following in the footsteps of his predecessor, who lost a no-confidence vote in December. Addressing lawmakers on September 8, Mr. Bao said they could topple the government but could not erase reality. The reality would remain harsh as spending would continue to rise and the already unsustainable public debt burden would become heavier and more costly. Mr. Peru is expected to submit his resignation to President Emmanuel Macron on the morning of September 9. President Macron will name a new prime minister in the coming days. Army Minister Sebastian Lecornu and Justice Minister Kieran Damanin are said to be the frontrunners. The problem for Mr. Macron is that after 3 failed centrist prime ministers, opposition parties are not willing to give him another chance. The far right and the far left have both said they would immediately call for a vote of no confidence if another centrist prime minister is appointed. The next French prime minister will be no less fierce in the budget battle. The socialists want to tax the rich and reverse Mr. Baydon's corporate tax cuts. What the Republicans see as a red flag. As a result, France's fiscal situation is unlikely to be resolved soon. Investors are worried that French government bond yields have risen above those of Spain, Portugal, and Greece, countries that were at the heart of the Eurozone debt crisis. An ELB survey shows that in the event of another snap parliamentary election, the National Front would come in first, with the left coming in second, and Mr. Baydon's centrist bloc far behind. Yeah,